Welcome to Your Future in Sales and Marketing, a podcast that helps you make great career decisions to get the most out of your career journey. We'll introduce you to the AXR network of established senior leaders and a handpicked group of future aspiring leaders who have it all in front of them. You'll learn what it's like in the top job and how to get there. Your hosts from AXR's specialist sales and marketing recruitment team will also land bonus episodes for you on how to work with recruiters, write a resume, and smash an interview, as well as our very popular market updates. It's the podcast that has it all. You can't get this career advice anywhere else.
Welcome everyone to Your Future in Sales and Marketing. My name is Mike Dixon, Director of the AXR Sales and Marketing Practice. We're joined in the studio today by Dan Crabtree, Senior Sales Director for PepsiCo. Welcome, Dan. How are you?
Great, Mike. Thanks.
And Dan, we're going to do, as usual, a real deep dive into your career. Lots of interesting moves there. Some a bit different, I think, and everyone's career is different. I think yours is a little bit more different than most, which I like.
I'll take that as a good thing.
It is a good thing. It's a compliment, trust me. So Dan, before we get into your career journey, which I'm really looking forward to, we ask every guest the same question. What's your favorite brand? And you have to pick one you haven't worked on.
Sure. So the brand for me is Crocs. I have to be honest. It's not my favorite. And I'm not an owner of them or have ever worn them. But the reason that I think they're noteworthy is really what they've done from a cultural perspective and taking what I think at a point in time was daggy footwear for someone going fishing, but immersing themselves in culture and all the way from where they were to now being featured in high fashion to brand collaborations to being on, the feet of every Gen Z that you pass in the street. For me, it's just an incredibly, I think, impressive brand that, as I said, has found themselves immersed in culture in a really, really unique way. So that for me is mind-blowing and I think really speaks to the strength of Crocs as a brand, but also the strength of what brands can do in really finding that sweet spot in culture.
I'm going to keep my eyes open for Crocs going forward, Dan.
Absolutely.
So let's get into your background. Before we do career, where did you grow up, Dan? Where are you from?
Yeah, always been from Sydney. So very proud to have grown up in Western Sydney with my parents and my brother. And being from Western Sydney, I've had friends joke that now I'm a reformed bogan, but I am incredibly proud of where I grew up. And I think lucky with the upbringing that I had that it was a fairly open slate for, what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. But growing up in the family that I did, it was largely, my dad's a tradie, my brother's a tradie. My mum was a secretary at a law firm. And that really was my only experience of what a job in corporate could be. So I always thought I wanted to be a lawyer and that didn't work out. And I think that's probably a good thing. But yeah, very far removed from what I do now. So my family don't understand what it is I do. But they know that I sell snacks and food to retailers, but they think I'm reversing the car up and unloading it at the loading dock. So yeah, probably very different to that experience growing up. Still based in Sydney, so live on the North Shore now with my partner and enjoying all things that come with having a puppy. Now I have a 5-month-old boxer that's slowly destroying our house, but lots of fun.
I've got a 8-month-old Groodle now who honestly looks more poodle than golden retriever. And she, if you leave her too long in the house, you've got to just make sure that, if you want it, it's in a cupboard somewhere because she'll get it and do something with it.
Yeah, we joke ours is passionate about gardening, passionate about laundry, all those, household things that he's very much into.
Yeah, excellent. So it's funny, actually, just before we jump in, as you say there, family often, if they're not from the world of corporate or particularly, FMCG or retail, they don't get it. And I remember we had Supriya Singh on the pod recently, who's the new MD at Blackmores. And I think her first role was within Procter & Gamble and her mum and dad thought it was a law firm. They're very proud.
Probably makes more sense than if you describe my family think we make doing what we do incredibly complicated. They just don't understand how it can be all the things that we make it. But yeah.
Oh, there's a statement. Do we make it complicated? I wonder.
In some ways, I think we might.
Well, that keeps us all busy, doesn't it? Good. So let's start at the beginning. So like so many Aussies, your first job was at Woolies. But unlike most, you stayed there. What kept you at Woolies through uni days and beyond?
I think as a starting point, a really tangible reason that I had to pay for uni. So growing up in Woolies, and I do really think I grew up in Woolies and it's a business that I love. Started as a teenager through school. That provided an opportunity through uni to continue working there. So while I was at uni, I actually did night fill for Woolies. I was also a merchandiser for Tip Top. So I was juggling both while doing uni. As I said, very tangible reasons at the time. But then as I worked through uni and understood the opportunity that Woolworths presented, it's such an incredibly, large business that enables different career paths in many different ways. I began to understand the opportunity that, the business could present beyond uni. So at the time, my store manager helped me understand the graduate program that back then was only open to internal. So you had to be within the Woolworths system somewhere. And that became a really promising opportunity post-uni. So that was entirely the reason that I stayed and was successful in getting onto the grad program, which really was the start of it all. So yeah, kind of born into Woolworths, but that presented a really interesting career opportunity post.
Yeah, it certainly lit the fire for you. And one of the things I was really struck me when we did the prep for this, Dan, was the phrase you used, which was your career North Star. And I was thinking about that, is that something that you arrived at quite early when you kind of thought, there's something I want to be, and this is what my North Star is?
Yeah, and I use the term North Star because I think there's no ability for anyone to really define a path with clear steps. I just think that's unrealistic. But I think having that longer term where you want to be enables that roadmap, and then you kind of fill in the blanks as you go and make decisions that take you there. So for me, that North Star was always a high impact commercial role. I love the commercial aspect of tangible results and clear outcomes. But I actually I did a commerce degree and I majored in marketing and finance. And at the time, I thought marketing was it for me. I love brands, I love product, and I love everything that comes with that. So I really did think it was marketing, but the Woolies grad program gave me great opportunities to really understand broader opportunities. So as I worked through rotations across replenishment and marketing, I think I understood that marketing probably wasn't what I thought it was, but it was when I found the buying rotation that it really, I think, fit. And it's that unique crossover of, it's brand and it's product. But then that finance aspect that I'd studied of tangible commercial outcomes and using brand and product and activation to drive growth and really hit the mark with consumers. So I think that North Star then kind of neatly came together with that grad program experience.
I think it's great. You had the opportunity to get on a grad program. I wish companies would invest more in them. We wonder where our talent's coming from sometimes within particularly the FMCG industry, with decreasing field teams in terms of size and grad programs not what they were. I think they're coming back a bit. I think they're coming back, but it does put pressure on where is this talent in the future going to be. I mean, it's good for people like us in our business because it's harder to recruit. But as the industry, I think we have an obligation to invest a bit more in younger talent.
And I think from a candidate point of view, when you've just been through school and been through uni, how are you meant to know what it is that you want to do and create that North Star without having that ability to navigate some different experiences and really start to piece it together? So I think it's great for both businesses, but also the candidates as well.
It is. It's like, I think businesses have a responsibility to actually, to look after the future. But anyway, we digress. We could get into this. But back to your career. As you said, you kind of found your home in buying, and that was gave you a real enthusiasm for the commercial side. And there came a point within Woolies that you then stepped out. And I'm interested in that move because it was to ALDI. So you stuck within the retail world. What drew you to ALDI? And talk a bit about that experience, because you weren't there for long, for somebody who's got pretty long tenure in organizations you've been in, Dan, but that was one of the shorter ones.
Yeah, and as I said, I very much grew up in Woolworths and still really passionate about that business and all the opportunities that it gave me. But back then, ALDI had entered the market, been on a really strong growth trajectory, but they were different from an employee proposition as well as for consumers and shoppers. But that came with a real clarity of strategy and clarity of what that proposition was, that they were simple, but really clear on what they wanted to be and how they wanted to do it. So that really was the opportunity from my point of view, was to step into something different, but that business having real clarity and almost knowing themselves and really confident in that. And that from an employee point of view as well, that they really attach themselves to a value proposition that is a high degree of accountability and a high degree of responsibility, but that also comes with a lot of autonomy as well. So they'll be really clear in what your role is from beginning to end and the fact that you own that and deliver against that. So that was a really exciting proposition. Back then, ALDI didn't recruit buying roles externally. So that was ultimately where I wanted to end up. But the feeder roles for all of those positions within the business came from area managers. So they really wanted to get people in at the ground level, understanding stores and understanding their core business. And then those area managers were the feeder roles or the pool of talent to take elsewhere in the business. So I stepped across and ALDI was fantastic and very much delivered on the promise. I learned a lot, but for where I wanted to be in that buying role, I wasn't in any great hurry. But for what I thought might have taken 3, 4, 5 years was actually going to be more of a 5 or 6 years. So I needed to probably stop and reassess whether that was the right time frame for me, and made the call that I'd prioritize getting back into a commercial role as opposed to that time frame that it could take.
I get a sense in ALDI that you're either there for long term or you get the experience, which is why I've known lots of people who've worked in ALDI in that type area manager type role. It's very commercial. It's very structured. The systems and processes are fantastic, but it's quite regimented as well. A bit military-esque almost, I've heard it described as, in terms of just, you know what to do, and, it's very clear. But I think the journey then, as you say, to kind of national roles takes a long time. Maybe different now. Maybe
I think it was changing. And I think like many businesses, I don't think it's only true of ALDI. I think it's true of probably most places that I've worked. I think when it's a fit and whether you're going to be there for a long time or not. And in many ways, ALDI was a great fit. As I said, I loved the culture. I loved the responsibility and the accountability. It was just that time it was going to take to, they said, get me closer to that North Star.
Yeah, great. Yeah, extraordinary business. I think, as an aside, without doubt, it seems to be the retail that everyone loves dealing with. Just on a kind of personal level, they kind of like managing ALDI. But anyway, so they do a great job. Amazing business. Now, your next move is interesting because it's your step out of retail. And, we have a lot of people on here with an FMCG core to their background. Now, you're obviously very senior in PepsiCo now, but the next role is to CHEP. And that's a business we'd see rarely on a resume in the kind of CPG world that we operate in. How did that happen? How did you end up at CHEP?
I think lots of people would know CHEP as the blue pallet. And during COVID, we all became very, very conscious of just how important that was. And I've always seen my path as retail, not kind of linearly through a retailer or an FMCG, but broader retail. And CHEP has broader, I think, opportunity and solutions than they're known for. So they really are an end-to-end supply chain business. They play a really unique role across FMCG and retail in how they connect that end-to-end value chain across what they do in manufacturing, what they do in fresh solutions, and then obviously the blue pallet that they're known for. So at the time, CHEP had a strong ambition to really step change their engagement with retailers and with FMCG businesses and play a stronger role in articulating end-to-end value. So how do you leverage supply chain solutions to really reduce touch points through the supply chain, increase efficiency, and reduce handling costs? So with that, my experience in both, Woolworths and ALDI across stores and buying was really relevant. And they'd recruited some talent from the likes of Unilever, myself from the retail side, and a couple of others that were similarly with retailers and FMCG to really build out that engagement. So that was how it came together at the time.
Yeah, so it makes sense, logical, a business that had more to offer. What was the experience like?
It was fantastic and uniquely positioned, I think, to really understand businesses across that spectrum, that their touch points across every part of FMCG. There is a crazy stat that I don't remember about just the volume of their solutions that go through supply chains and, the data and the insight that comes from being able to connect every touch point throughout those businesses is really unique. And the engagement that we built was fantastic. I had the opportunity to engage with, chief supply chain officers at Woolworths, really senior stakeholders throughout FMCG. So it was a really eye-opening experience from being within the retailer side to start to connect me through broader FMCG businesses as well.
Yeah, I like the breadth of perspective it would give you in terms of how the whole industry works. And it's interesting because your next move is into FMCG and into PepsiCo. Now, you joined as a national business manager, I think. A couple of things I want to just dig into there. So I guess, first of all, was that always the kind of plan? At some point, I've done retail, I've done this kind of supply chain type business, solutions business. I'd love to work in suppliers side as well.
Look, I'd love to say it was a master plan, but it wasn't. As I said, for me, it was always commercial, high impact roles within the retail space. And CHEP had recruited my boss at the time from Unilever, and we still laugh to this day that we remember the connection with PepsiCo actually came about from a business presentation, but we both arrived on the day in blue suits with white shirts, feeling like insurance salesmen or something like that. But we arrived and presented to Danny Saloni, who was the commercial director at the time, about end-to-end solutions and how we could, reduce merchandising time in stores for retailers from a solution that would work the entire way through the supply chain. So really great of Danny to give us the time, but that created the connection. And then it was actually my boss from CHEP that stepped into PepsiCo. There is a really strong Unilever PepsiCo connection when it comes to talent, but she stepped across first. And then a period of time down the track, she had an opportunity within her team that I was really interested in. And it was the first e-commerce role that PepsiCo had created here in the Australian market. So the ambition was that e-commerce role and really building out the function. There was a job description, but I think it was almost written in pencil at the time for what Danny thought it could and should be, but was really for someone to come in and build. So that I found really exciting. Through the recruitment process, the Coles NBM opportunity actually came up as a second option. And obviously I'd come in with the intent to work for my prior boss, but the Coles NBM opportunity was really, getting in to understand the core of the business as opposed to creating something new. And an absolute credit to Danny at the time. He gave me a lot of time to really talk me through the different opportunities and what they'd mean and what that could mean next. So as I said, not a grand plan, but came together through, people and relationships and someone like Danny that invested time in helping me, I guess, steer where I'd eventually end up in that Coles NBM role.
And thinking back to that time, Dan, because feels like you've packed a lot in, because that's only 7 or so years into your career. So you were kind of moving at reasonable speed. But you must have had a perspective on suppliers from obviously being a buyer, from working in CHEP, you're meeting lots of suppliers, and then you're in one, and the world is quite different. And there is a whole different kind of perspective being a supplier compared to being a retailer, compared to being a CHEP. For you, what was that shift like? What was notable in terms of the world that you're working in a supplier world?
Yeah, I think it was having that retailer perspective and being able to share some of the reasons why things happen or some of the reasons why they don't happen.
Right.
And being able to articulate or frame things in a different way. I think as suppliers, we often get really engrossed in, and we are the specialists in our own categories, and you're partnering with people on the retail side that are the same in their own categories.
Yeah.
But I think you then need to zoom out and really understand the broader perspective and what retailers are trying to achieve at a macro level, or what their strengths or opportunities are at that broader total store, total offering point of view. So yeah, I think the piece for me was being able to articulate what, our retail partners might have been trying to achieve at that time, framing things differently. And then also internally for me, I think similar metrics, but slightly different P&L and really having to get close to a different P&L and what that meant, because you're really managing two. You're managing your own while managing your joint business plans and customer P&L. So that additional layer, I think, definitely took some learning.
And what support did PepsiCo give you? Because they actually brought a unique set of skills that probably they didn't have in the business. That was, as you said there, you could give them a sense of why things do or don't happen from a retailer's point of view, which is very interesting, but some stuff that would just be new to you. Were you kind of just running fast to learn and keep up, or were PepsiCo kind of feeding you with what you needed from a development point of view?
I think a bit of both. It's always obviously up to the individual to really do that learning and understand what they need to get across and quickly. We move at an incredibly fast pace. But at the same time, I think the system within PepsiCo is really supportive of that in the way that we operate within cross-functional customer teams. So you've got that cross-functional knowledge and cross-functional expertise all pushing in the same direction for really great business and customer outcomes, at the same time as having great centers of excellence. So if you think of something like e-commerce or revenue growth or commercial finance, we have the right business partners in place that are really great at what they do, so that if your tight-knit cross-functional customer team wasn't able to get you there, the broader business, I think, is a really great support that definitely helped me get up to speed really quickly. And as I said, I refer to pace, and pace might come up quite regularly, but it was really in and start running. There was just a lot happening and continues to be a lot happening, which is exciting and challenging, but I think that's very much, it's FMCG.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely. Back to career. Did you have a sense of what careers look like in a business like PepsiCo when you joined?
I did, but I think it was far too linear at the time. So I think having worked on the other side and interacting with different stakeholders within FMCG businesses that I'd worked with, I think my understanding was very linearly how you could move from account manager to business manager to sales director.
Yeah.
And didn't appreciate, similar to Woolworths and the fact that you could have multiple different careers within that business. A global organization like PepsiCo is really similar, that I'd encourage people and, in retrospect, even myself, to really understand the breadth of opportunities that comes with across functions, across markets, and really taking away from that linear progression or linear view of how you could step through. So that was my understanding at the time. It's very different now.
Yeah, agreed. It's quite typical, I think, that linear kind of view, because it's what you see, your boss's boss, your boss's boss's boss, and it's like, all right, that's what I'm aiming for. But you had this North Star, which was actually, I quite like, it wasn't specific, which probably encouraged that breadth of thinking. And did you have, and do you still have, people that would give you that perspective, career mentors at all?
I've probably not had formal mentors. I think earlier in my career, I definitely thought that was important and had those in place. I think it's probably true of a lot of us. You do that with the best intent and then you lose a bit of the rigor. You might have a monthly or quarterly cadence, and it's really hard to keep those formal mentoring relationships moving, especially as people kind of move through their own careers. So while I haven't had formal mentors, what I've had are really great informal mentors, almost just the people that, you're on the journey with, and those really strong relationships where I've been incredibly fortunate to have people that have pulled me along with them, while at the same time, I've been fortunate enough to do the same for others. So I think those informal mentoring relationships, those people that are at the end of a phone call when you have a decision to make, exploring different opportunities, it's who's that go-to that you call for advice. And I'd encourage people, and from my point of view, it's having those within the industry that understand it and are close to what it means, but also having some that aren't.
Yeah.
And are removed enough to give you that objective perspective for what that next career move could entail, what it could add into the toolkit that you kind of move along with. So I think informal mentors, both within and outside the industry, have been really important to me.
It's interesting. We were chatting before the pod about Paul Bull's MindPick business, which we support very much at AXR. I think it's a great concept to actually create a bit of structure and give people an opportunity to tap into. The idea is effective mentoring and working alongside people who are at your level to learn from them, but also from coaches and senior leaders to kind of get this input. And we do support them from a career lens perspective. I think it's important. And having people external to your business, I think it's really useful, because the mentors are great inside your business, but there's always a few agendas going on. Naturally, it has to be. Whereas externally, there's no kind of agenda other than you. And that's, so I think I'd encourage people to either look up the MindPick business, but certainly look to external as well as internal mentors.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be completely external. So, someone that's definitely been a long-standing influence on my career is now in the liquor industry. So still very much in tune with what's happening, but just not, in the granularity of the same retailers, the same categories, the same business, but definitely understands it, but has always given me a really great external perspective.
You're a senior sales director now, Dan. Just summarize. So joined as national business manager. What was the path to your current role?
Yeah, so joined as national business manager on Coles, then had the opportunity to step into a sales leadership role, leading our independents business. What we call global customers, or ALDI Costco, was then added into that remit. And then I moved into the customer director for Woolworths before my current role as senior director of our grocery or retail business.
Great. So let's bring that role to life. So what's the scope and scale of that role?
So I've got really the leadership of our customer agenda. As I said, it's what we would call our grocery business or retail business. So all of our major retail partners and the way that we partner and build joint plans with those retailers. From a revenue point of view, it's circa 1.2, 1.3 billion from a retail sales point of view, but really leading that agenda and owning the total revenue from an Australian foods perspective. So I know the PepsiCo model can sometimes be a little bit confusing, but my role is within that Australian foods remit.
Great. And for those who don't know PepsiCo and might think, well, where does the beverage business sit?
Yeah, so our beverage business is still very much part of the family. Within this market, we operate a franchise bottling operation, which means for those brands that we own within this market, we have a bottling partner within Asahi that handles the make, move and sell of those products within the market, but still very much within the PepsiCo business. And we do a lot hand in hand with them in terms of the way that we activate and really look to bring our brands to life in the market.
Great. And I do like to, I think it's a fair opportunity when we bring guests on to talk a bit about the business they're in, because we have a lot of listeners who are very interested in your career, Dan, but would also look at the PepsiCo business and think, I wonder if that's a place I could work at some point. Dan is doing very well. Maybe I could too. You mentioned brands a couple of times. So 2 questions. One, bring it to life. Who are the brands? What are the kind of brands we'll all know, I'm sure, and love? And then we'll talk more broadly about PepsiCo.
Yeah, so we are the market leader within snacks, and that gives us the opportunity to work on iconic Australian brands like Smith's, like Red Rock Deli and Twisties that are really long-standing, as I said, iconic Aussie brands. Even people are surprised that Red Rock was actually born here, and now really pleased to say that it's doing great things in other markets as well as then our powerhouse global brands. So the likes of Cheetos, Doritos, and Popcorners. So I think passion for our brands isn't something that takes a lot of effort. We're all incredibly lucky to work on the brands that we do within this market. And as I said, in being the category leader, we really pride ourselves on how we partner and really play that category captain role for driving growth within the market. Really for that overall ambition that at a corporate level, we say it's to create more smiles with every sip and every bite. And that really is the fun element of the brands and categories that we work in. From a Australia Foods and from a customer perspective, what we show up every day to do is to really be within arm's reach for our consumers, that if there's a relevant occasion there, we want to be part of it. And we articulate that in saying we want to be always and everywhere for our consumers. So as I said, really being within arm's reach. And then for our partners, it's how we're indispensable. As I said, we really think deeply about how we play that category captaincy role and really show up in a way that drives growth and drives incrementality for ourselves and our partners.
Great. Well said. From a leadership point of view, I'm always interested in how do you make that make sense for the individuals who work for you? How many people in your team, Dan?
Over 40.
Over 40. So it's a lot of people, everyone different, everyone with their own kind of way of thinking about their connection to PepsiCo, I'm sure. But how do you connect people to that mission so it makes sense for them?
I think, as I said, there really doesn't take a lot of connection to our brands. I think that's the piece that really has a lot of weight for people in being a really motivating factor. We have fantastic brands and we operate in a really fun category. So I think that gives people a lot of energy and a lot of connection to our business. Beyond that, I think connection to the strategy really comes from, as I said, those cross-functional teams that create a really clear objective that we're all pushing in that same direction to show up as a category captain and drive growth for our retail partners. So I think that it's inbuilt in the system. And then I think my role in connecting people to that is really removing barriers and letting people do what they're so passionate about doing. And I think the best way to go about that, I kind of articulated as trust and culture really lead the way for us, that we're a fast-paced business of incredibly motivated and energized people. And I think with the right values and the right trust, your team will run through walls for you. You've just got to let them do it and remove those barriers that get in the way. So I think that connection to our brands and that culture first approach to how we show up is really the strength of PepsiCo.
Brilliant. So 40 in your team, for those who aren't in a tier 1 FMCG and might think that feels a lot of people, particularly in your parents might think all they do is rock up with a car to Woolies and unload
at the door.
Give me an idea of the structure and scope. What is that? How do you kind of set up a team like that?
Yeah, so within my team, we've obviously got our sales leadership team with a customer director that's really responsible for that cross-functional customer partnership. So within that, we've probably got the typical structure of national business managers and national account managers that support working with those retailers. There's also a part of my team that is a center of excellence for e-commerce. So how we show up with pure play e-commerce customers, as well as being that center of excellence for how we activate and grow and partner with, core e-commerce businesses like Woolworths and Coles from an online point of view. I've also got what we call customer supply chain, but, VRP roles and customer supply management that sits within the team as well. Then holistically, I think if you look outside those customer teams themselves, really supported by dedicated cross-functional resource for each of those customers across, whether it be finance, category, shopper marketing, there really is that matrix structure. That means we've got all functions really pushing towards that objective with the customer at the heart.
Great. So you've got a team of 40 within your remit, but then a much broader resource in the business that works indirectly for you, but actually is still supporting the customer agenda.
Yeah, as well as a really broad field team that I think need to be mentioned for what they activate and what they achieve every day in stores in supporting our customers. So very lucky to have the support and scope of the field team that we do showing up every day in stores to deliver against that objective.
Fantastic. Back to you and your, I guess, career and development. One of the things I think can be often overlooked by people who are in earlier mid-stage career, future leaders, is that they look at a leader like you and think, oh, you're there, you're done, you're the finished article, all looks good, but you will still work on your development. And I'm curious as to what are the things that you work on.
Yeah, and I think for me, I'll answer the question and I'll give you a little bit of my thinking on the bit on, you're there, you're done.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it's ensuring we have a really total business and enterprise perspective. I think functionally as salespeople, we are so outcome driven and we push incredibly hard against the number, and that's what we're there to do. But I think my role becomes unlocking that at a total business level to ensure that it's not achieving the number at all costs or achieving the number in, really small tactical ways. Ultimately, it has to make sense for the end-to-end business. It has to make sense to our brands and it has to make sense for all of our partners throughout the value chain. So the bit for me that's a real focus is making sure that I continually demonstrate and lead by example with that total enterprise approach and making sure that as a leadership team, we really show up with that united front for that overall business objective. And then I think the piece on, you're there, you're done. I really encourage people to enjoy the journey and enjoy the steps that it takes to get there. I know you're a runner, Mike, and it's really about, you don't do the run and it's done and dusted. I think you'll always be frustrated or lacking something if it's just about that end goal. I think it's enjoying the training, enjoying the process, enjoying showing up every day and looking at how you can do something incrementally better or challenging the ways you're doing things and learning along the way. Because otherwise, I think, salespeople, and I'm very red and very outcome focused myself, you can often be frustrated because you're never quite there. So it's really being more focused on enjoying the journey and the steps you're taking on that path to the North Star.
Yeah, good perspective. It's like we talked about mission a few minutes ago, Dan. One of the things I often look for when I'm interviewing for senior roles, actually, and people on the cusp of senior roles, is that enterprise thinking. Can they connect what they're doing to a bigger purpose? Can they understand how they're contributing to the strategic objectives of the organization? Can they remove themselves from delivery, the red, and actually be able to take a step back? And when you start to do that, then you're stepping into genuinely senior leadership because your responsibility is to the business.
I think it also, to the point we made earlier on breadth and different experiences, I think that becomes really important as well because it allows you to really understand those different perspectives. So I think the strongest salesperson can come from a category background and vice versa, having marketing experience. I think it helps with that well-roundedness. That means you're appreciating not just the driving for the number in your area, but the breadth of impact that can have and how you go about doing it.
Yeah. And picking on that theme, I want to finish on a couple of bits of advice for our listeners. What advice would you give somebody around evaluating a career decision?
I think it's probably being able to step out of the here and now. And there's kind of an analogy about how you step up onto the balcony and look back down and having that ability to zoom out and look at an opportunity with what's it going to add into that toolkit that you've got of capabilities or skills. So moving beyond that linear view of, this role into the next one, or my boss's job and my boss's job. But yeah, being able to remove yourself and really evaluate, is it going to give me a different level of thinking? Is it going to enable me to really engage with stakeholders in a different way? And how is it, if you're really clear on where you're wanting to head, is it going to add or detract from that? But I think you probably need to have that ability to zoom out. And as I said, I think those mentoring relationships and people that you can call are really important in giving you that perspective so that it's not a short-term jump for here and now, but really adding into that longer-term pathway that someone's on.
Yeah. And the broadening piece, for listeners who are thinking, it sounds great. How do I make that happen? How does somebody ensure that they grab those experiences. And when we talk to broadening, there's lots of different ways you can do it. But I think, I'm not putting words in your mouth, I think some people feel, well, that's the business is going to do that for me, but it's kind of not. It's up to you. So how does someone take responsibility for that?
I think there's ways you can do it both within your role and outside of your role. But I think, this is really not a tangible response, but I just think being open, not saying no, looking at the reasons why something could be a good opportunity, leaning into saying yes is just a really broad approach that I think is beneficial. But then I think within roles, it's being really open to understanding, being really curious, understanding what's in it from another functional perspective, and really exploring what that could mean for your role. So yeah, I think the breadth piece has continually come up as a really big opportunity. It's just that openness always comes down for me to relationships. And I know that's maybe a different perspective at the moment, the world is AI and everything's evolving to the role that AI will play. I'm constantly reminded of just how much impact the person in that seat at a point in time has. So it's still, for me, I think what we do is still fundamentally a relationship business, and building those connections, having the right stakeholders and having the right relationships, I think really opens up opportunities and different perspectives that will help people build out that breadth.
Yeah, two things in there really. So a lot to be said for sticking your hand up and saying yes and being at the front of the line and seeing, looking, being open to the opportunity and being that positive enthusiast that steps into it, even if it's out your comfort zone. In fact, particularly if it's out your comfort zone. And then ensuring that you've not got your head down all the time. Delivery is important, but, connectivity across the organization also.
And visibility. I think if you are head down, really focused on delivering those tangible outcomes, it becomes just as much about the how as the what. So the how is the visibility, the relationships and the connections that you build throughout the organization.
Yeah, great. Well, last question, back to the North Star, which is where we started. I know that, you don't set career roadmaps, and I like that. Having this North Star is important. So what does it look like for you? Come back to this kind of the future for you, Dan.
I think for me, it's always, as I said, those high impact commercial roles, because I do love tangible outcomes and I am incredibly outcome focused. But I think for me that North Star is still very much that, but at a broader scale. So that could mean a couple of different things. It could be broader roles within this market, or a business like PepsiCo has fantastic opportunities where that breadth could come from different markets. I'd love the exposure to the scale of our North American business. And that could actually mean for me that breadth could come from the market and not necessarily a role. It could be a narrower role within a bigger business, or as I said, within this market, a bigger role. So it's high impact, it's commercial, but as I'd encourage everyone else, it's breadth and just finding those opportunities to continue to broaden my experience.
Brilliant. So the Boxer might be going on a holiday at some point in the future. Who knows? A long holiday. That's great. I think that's really enjoyed the conversation, Dan. Picking apart your career, there's some moves that are not on everyone's FMCG career path, but it points to the breadth of perspective that you've built and you now bring to the business and to this North Star. High impact commercial roles. It's really nicely summed up. It's like your career mission, which I think is fantastic. So thank you so much for coming on and being a guest today.
Thanks, Mike.
And thank you for listening, everybody, and believing in our business too. We are passionate about helping you make great career decisions and helping organizations everywhere raise the bar on recruitment to see the people you hire as investments that give you a return way beyond that first role you hire them for. From me, Mike Dixon at XR Recruitment and Search, thank you for listening. We'll be back soon with more episodes and insights to help your future in sales and marketing.
We hope you enjoyed today's podcast from AXR Recruitment and Search. We're passionate about helping you get the most out of your sales and marketing career. Keep listening as we bring you more career insights and advice from Australia's inspiring sales and marketing leaders. See you next time on Your Future in Sales and Marketing.